Hey everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be playing with lots of layers and creating some journal backgrounds. So I'm starting on a very use it up page in my journal. This is one I've just been practicing with different colours, a bit of a use it up go. You can see I've got some Stabilo oil pencil there and some sketchy painting. So I'm just sort of covering over all of it with some paint. I'm not really thinking about the colours I'm using, just going in with lots and lots of colours, but I'm tending to go in sort of like 3 patches across the page. And this is what I do in a lot of cases when I'm not necessarily thinking. So you can see I'm putting that orange, it's slightly translucent. I can kind of see through it, it's sort of picking up those gold tones from underneath. Most of the time when I put out a tiny little bit of paint, I paint it out until it's completely gone, and it's usually a fairly thin layer, so it dries pretty quickly. But if I've got a big wet patch, I will do what I just did there and heat it with my heat gun. So one of the ways when I apply paint like this, it is quite patchy and messy, but one of the ways you can bring it together is to stencil over the entire top of it in any colour. But I tend to go for a white or a black, just as it's sort of a neutral colour and it has a habit of pushing whatever you've got in the background to the background. So this is a big stencil from Stencil Girl. Lots of different shapes and sizes in it, so there's a bit of variety with the piece that I'm working with. Then I'm just flipping over and using on the other side too, and I'll move it down the bottom and do some bits and pieces there. So you can see the paint that I'm applying is still quite translucent, but what it's doing is it's kind of hiding those rough edges of where the paint colours meet and blending it all together. So while you see the colour in the background, I suppose the focus is more on the pattern over the top. So it's a really great way of sort of disguising patchworky type backgrounds. There's nothing wrong with them, but unless I'm particularly doing something very geometric, I tend to put mark making or something over the top. Because I wasn't sure where I was going with this, so for those of you who follow my channel know that it's a regular thing with me, I'm now going in with some stamping to add a little bit of mark making over the top. Now you can obviously do your own mark making, which I do quite regularly, but quite often I'll just go and use my stamps, and usually I will stamp in black. When I'm doing stuff like this, I like to add some white and black to the page. So I've just got this random little container of good background stamps. There's a mix of foam stamps, Tim Holtz stamp, all sorts in there. They're just great ones that I go and use regularly. So dots, rings, crosses, that sort of thing in it. And it helps sort of balance up the page a little bit more. When I'd done that, I decided I wanted to add in some brighter colours. So now I'm going in again and doing some more mark making. This time I'm just going in straight with paint and paintbrushes, and I'm just letting the paintbrush do my work for me. So with this, I have found that I go and buy from my dollar store really cheap kids brushes. You usually get a pack with lots of different shapes and sizes in them. I can be really rough on them. I can smush them out to make different shapes and not feel guilty about ruining a good brush. And they're good because I've got small hands. They're actually a good size for my hands because they don't have the long stems on them, which I really appreciate too. So you can see by adding the paint over the top, while it's getting very busy, it's adding a little bit more interest to the page, and you're starting to get all these layers happening on top of each other. Now you can stop at any stage. Obviously I like to keep going, but you know, one of the things I do suggest to people who are a bit scared about doing this is take progress photos of each layer, and then you can work out what you like, what you don't like, and know where you feel comfortable stopping in the future. I obviously just keep going and adding. So I'm using my paint markers now. If you didn't have lots of acrylic paints to do the background, you can use obviously paint pens to do the mark making in the background. If you don't have acrylic paint pens, you can use acrylic paints and a finer brush. So just use what you've got. I also quite often use like permanent markers. You can use Sharpies and that sort of thing. So just go nuts. The only thing is with Sharpies, sometimes their paint, their ink is a little bit translucent because it is an alcohol-based ink instead of an acrylic paint. Once I've done my little dots and dashes, then I'm going to add some collage to my piece. So when I'm creating backgrounds, like I would be quite happy just to leave that in my journal and use it as a background. Sometimes I would do a magazine collage on top of that because it's a very, very busy background. These backgrounds that I've just done are brilliant for doing on A4 pieces of paper and chopping them up to make card backgrounds or a scrapbook page and so on. So they're really, really versatile. Put them through a die cut machine. I quite often take photos of the finished background or scan it so I can print it out another stage and use it for another project. So don't forget that you can do that sort of stuff with it. But I'm choosing to keep going with this page, and I'm sticking down this collage rice paper from Natalie May Scrapbooking. So it's a coloured collage paper. I've stuck it down with gel medium, and you can sort of see how it's becoming a little bit more opaque again as it dries. So when you put it first on, obviously it'll go quite translucent, but because it is printed, it will brighten up again a little bit. I've painted in the rest of the body. Instead of just having the head floating in the middle of the page, I've painted in the body, which for me I find really, really important to do. I don't like things floating in the middle of the page. It just doesn't look right to me. Now I'm going in with my Stabilo woody pencils. These, I like the Stabilo All Pencil. They're the kids' versions. They're really fat and chunky. Great coverage. You can scribble them on. They're really, really waxy. They smudge nicely. And obviously you can wet them and move them as well. If you didn't have those, you could use, distress crayons. You could use the Jane Davenport version of the distress crayons. You could use acrylic paints to do that. Whatever you've got will work. So just use whatever medium, but I just like having that really bright opaque colour on top. I chose the green to sort of go with the blue of her hair, so I just had a bit of a bounce on the page, particularly because the background had such warm colours in it, even though it was a mix of all the colours. Because the warm colours are more, I suppose, in your face, I decided to have those cooler colours to go with the woman that I'm putting on top. One of the things I like about the collage papers, and any collage papers, is that they've usually got some sort of details on them. So if you're not great at doodling or drawing, you've got those markers that you can go over the top and add your own little details, or copy over the details that are there. So she had little white dots in her hair, and just to make them really stand out, I got my paint pen out to highlight them, I suppose. And usually when I do that, I get a bit carried away and I will continue on those motifs. So the fact that I can practice with the ones that are already there gives me confidence to go on and make some of my own dots afterwards, if that makes sense. Now I'm going in with some text on my page, like I quite often do. When I've got big pages like this, I like to put a big quote on my page. So we can't direct the winds, but we can adjust her sails. And the reason I chose that quote was because it's a bit hard to see in her hair. She's actually got a little sailboat, so it's sort of really related. And a lot of people ask me how I come up with my quotes. In this instance, and quite a lot of in the instance, when I look at the image, if there's something that pops into my head, like boat, I'll look for boat quotes, or I'll look for sea quotes, and then choose something that fits. So I really like this one. It sort of fitted with the imagery, but also it was something that it appealed to me when I read it. I thought, oh yeah, that resonates with me. So I've written out my quote with paint pen first. The reason I do that is that background was solidly covered with acrylic paint, so it was permanent when it was dry. So it was sealed paper basically. So I can write over it with wet acrylic paint, which is what's in a paint pen, and if I make a mistake, a spelling mistake, or something doesn't fit in, I can just get a wet wipe and wipe it away, and I haven't ruined my page. I'm very heavy-handed when it comes to using pencils, so if I'd written it out with pencil first, I'd probably put dents in the page, which I couldn't get rid of, and it would annoy me. So you do you. That's why I go straight in with paint pens. So I find it the easier option for me. When I'm finished, I am going around all my letters with my white highlight, which helps push the lettering out from the background. Even though it's quite dark with the black letters, it really does make a difference in the end product by having that little drop shadow around your letters. And it's such an easy thing to do, but it gives a real finishing off part to your page when you're finished. So in the background, as you can sort of see, you can see the layers of, you know, the original paint, then stenciling, then stamping, then the mark making over the top, then the collage, and then the text. So lots and lots of layers. You can stop at any stage, but they're lots of fun to do. So if you get stuck, have a go at trying to layer up your work, add a few more layers and you feel comfortable with, and you might get a really lovely surprise. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.